Hello, welcome to United as One in Faith. This is a three-part podcast that's being put together for the benefit of us understanding more about the Cathedral in Cleveland and all of the things that have happened and transferred and transpired over the past 175 years. Today, I'm joined with Father Sean Ralph and Father John Manning. Father Ralph, please introduce exactly where we are in the diocese, where we are in the Cleveland area as it relates to 1847.
Well, so I'm Father Sean Ralph. I'm the rector of the Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist, and we are celebrating this year the 175th anniversary of the cathedral. So as you mentioned, the diocese was established way back in 1847, and shortly thereafter, the first bishop, Bishop Amadeus Rapp, commissioned the construction of the cathedral in 1848. And the very first Mass that was ever celebrated at the cathedral was actually in a temporary structure on Christmas Eve of 1848. And from that point forward, they kind of began the construction of the structure that we have today. It took a few years to complete, but it was completed by 1852. And ever since then, the cathedral has stood there at what is today the corner of East 9th and Superior as the mother church of the Diocese of Cleveland.
A little bit of prequel to that would be that when the diocese was formed in 1847, the state of Ohio was divided into two. Before that time, there was only the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. And before that, there was only the Diocese of Kentucky. And so gradually it showed that there was an evolution of people coming into the area. The property of the cathedral is actually built before, was purchased before in about 1848-49, and that was done by the pastor of the original parish in the Cleveland area, which was in the Flats off of Columbus Avenue. And there is always a great desire that the cathedral be formed and that it be something very, very special for the diocese. And so when the first bishop, Bishop Rapp, came, he had approximately 13 priests and half the state of Ohio. And many of the communities were very, very small, and they were spread out, especially to the east, and to the west would be in the Avon Lake area. There was small communities of Catholics in those areas. So it's a very, very unique prequel into the formation when Bishop Rapp came and he began his ministry. Incidentally, he didn't have a place to stay.
Oh, no.
And the first seminary that was used was actually a converted barn.
Oh.
And so then later on they built. So it was from very, very humble beginnings.
There seems to be this theme about a manger and hay
Yeah.
repeating here in Cleveland.
Sure.
And now we're looking at relatively raw real estate. I mean, the flats are kind of muddy and commerce is starting to develop.
And basically that's what happened. They began to move on the west. They began to move up, which is frequently it's called Irish Bend.
Right.
They came up and they began to settle in that area. And on the east side, they began to move around the stadiums. They began to have some there. But the area of the cathedral was really farmland.
Right.
One of the interesting things about it is most probably the closest neighbors to the cathedral were the Erie Street Cemetery, which is right opposite the baseball stadium.
Uh-huh.
If I remember my diocesan history right too, didn't the priests of the diocese all complain they built the cathedral in the middle of nowhere?
Yes, they did. Very strongly they complained about that.
Wow.
And now it sits in the heart of the bustling city of Cleveland.
It's really amazing. You know,
So these statements that I hear, because I'm new to the area myself, you live all the way in Medina.
yes.
And so this is a very long way to go. That's been an old statement, I guess, for centuries.
Oh, sure. They were complaining, especially many of the priests in the cathedral, as they were there, would travel out to various places and out to Avon or down to Sheffield or to Akron by horseback.
Oh, no kidding.
So they would have to really start on Thursday if they were going to get there by the weekend.
So why was a cathedral needed? I mean, how did a cathedral, the theme of our episodes is united as one in faith.
So that's a great question. And I think United as One, I think, hits at the heart of it. The cathedral really is the heart of the diocese. It's the mother church of all the other churches. Every diocese on earth has a cathedral. And even the word cathedral, the root of it is cathedra, which is the Latin word for chair. Because what makes a cathedral is it houses the cathedra or the chair of the bishop. It is the seat of the bishop as the mother church of all, right now, 185 parishes in the Diocese of Cleveland. It's from there that the bishop governs, shepherds, takes care of the pastoral needs of the flock of the 650-some thousand Catholics across those 185 parishes. And so, yeah, the cathedral is needed because it is, in a sense, the source of unity for all of that geography that makes up the 8 counties today of the Diocese of Cleveland. Mm-hmm. Just as the Pope is our sign of unity for the universal church, our bishop's communion with the Pope and our communion with our bishop kind of shows the unity of the church, from the universal to the local diocese down to our parishes. We're all connected in this one faith. And the cathedral, which is the seat of the bishop, is a visible sign of that unity that we have as Catholics, that we share this one faith. We're part of this one church. We believe together, and that's a visible sign of that.
I think one of the things, too, is that when you look at the history of Diocese of Cleveland, many of the historic churches really are abandoned now. It's not there. And new parishes have grown up. And still, the center of it is the cathedral, which has been there from the very first day.
So some things change, but the cathedral didn't.
It stays there.
Time over time over time.
Mm-hmm.
Because between 1847 and 1930, we went through 2 wars. The Civil War, which Ohio participated in greatly, and of course World War I.
Mm-hmm.
And these were very devastating to our community.
Oh, terribly so. And the other part of it, especially for the Catholic Church at this time, was the huge amount of immigration that came in, starting with the Irish, the Germans, the Bohemians, and then people that were coming in, especially in the 1900s, from the Slavic nations. And it wasn't just 1 or 2, it was really a flood of immigrants coming in. They came to areas, they set up their households, and they built their church. And really a remarkable thing to see and to experience.
It is remarkable because you consider they came from a village inside of a country, different from a Polish village inside of their country. Country norms, cultural norms, family norms were all brought with them. Yes. And they land here for the purpose of expressing themselves individually, but also in their faith.
Yes.
So what's going to be the common thing that unites them to include their faith?
Right.
The structure, the purpose, what is performed in love and caring and spiritual development by the bishop. Can we spend just a second talking about the bishop's role in terms of the cathedral?
Sure. So as I did mention before, it is the mother church, it's the seat of the bishop. But for us as Catholics, the bishop is more than just like a CEO or, some kind of, corporate leader. For us as Catholics, the bishop is a successor to the apostles, right? As Jesus gathered 12 apostles around himself and entrusted them with this leadership in the other church, this particular ministry, and they went out and established these other churches and the churches grow. Those apostles passed on their office of apostle to men who would succeed them, through the laying on of hands, through the gift of the Holy Spirit. And we trace that lineage all the way down to the bishops of today. And so our bishop here in Cleveland today, it's Bishop Edwin Relesic, is a successor to the apostles. It is him who is, again, that source of unity. It is him who is the sort of the one that we look to as sort of the teacher of the Catholic faith. And so the role of the bishop is very important in terms of our Catholic identity, because he connects us to that apostolic faith that we profess in the Creed, that apostolic faith that traces all the way back to those 12 apostles whom Jesus gathered around himself as he founded the church. And so it ties us in to that bigger picture historically and theologically to who we are as Catholics.
And earthly remains of many of the bishops, they're interred in the cathedral in the crypt, which is kind of a real way of saying we're all connected together.
Can one come and visit them?
Of course, yeah, you can come and you can see the crypt. And speaking of that connection that Father Manny was talking about to that history not only of Cleveland, but also in that same crypt we have the full skeletal remains of Saint Christine, an early Roman martyr. She was martyred in the 3rd century during that period of time where it was a capital crime to be a Christian. And she, a young girl, probably between 9 and 11 years old, was turned in, and she professed her faith boldly in the face of those who wanted her to deny it, and she was put to death. She shed her blood and was buried in the catacombs, and her full skeletal remains are there, connecting us to even this kind of bigger historical story of the witness of faith. And so it's one of, at the time when it was when she was sent from Rome, she was given as a gift to Bishop Schrems. There was only one of 2 collections outside of Italy of the full skeletal remains of an early Roman martyr, along with a vial of her blood. And so you can come down and visit the bishops of Cleveland entombed there, and to visit this saint, Saint Christine, and her relics that are there as well in the crypt chapel.
That's beautiful. It's a beautiful representation of our history.
It's kind of a powerful statement that when you walk into the cathedral, you're walking not only in our time and moment, but really this is something that stretches back 175 years. Yeah. This is who we are because this is our history.
I wonder how many Catholics here in the diocese, and we have, Father Strong, correct me, 185 parishes, stretching all the way down to Loudonville, and then about 6 or 7 counties.
Yeah, 8 counties.
8 counties, thank you. And so with that as the kind of like overall perspective, going back like a shutter closing and then opening into a new frame of reality, okay, 1847, what were my great-great-grandfathers doing? What were they worrying about?
Sure.
What did they get on their knees for and pray to God for? How did they look to the Catholic faith? How did they look to the cathedral, which was this new kind of like concept? And if I was an immigrant, first generation, I'm relating that to my cathedral back in my country. And I'm asking of it to be that for me, but it can't. It has to be what it is to unite us.
Right.
Because we can't just say, okay, you're going to remain Hungarian, you're going to remain Polish. We want you to be that. But at the same time, we want you to come together as a faith and practice as one.
Yeah, we're still together, even though there's been vast changes that have occurred. The cathedral is there as really a visible symbol of that, yeah.
What a challenge it is.
It is. It is.
So now we're going to kind of move forward in the framework of time. And we're going to start to look at 1930s, say to 1970s.
I think that was the era that you were in the seminary there, Father Manny.
1970, 1930. True. Well, in the 1930s, the city of Cleveland, especially around East 9th and Superior, was in what I think charitably could be termed a decline. It was very much involved in shipping and that, and there were many saloons in the area, and also they used the term flop house. That would be you could rent it for a night, very reasonable if you were traveling in that. And there was a great concern amongst the bishops in that the area was becoming unsafe, and so they wanted to think about maybe moving the cathedral out of Cleveland. And so they began to search around, and they began to move things. They took the school that was connected to the cathedral, and they moved it out to the University Circle, and that became Cathedral Latin. The bishops themselves moved out there, and they had property that they could build the cathedral, the new cathedral there. Unfortunately, what happened, the Depression came, and they determined that they better keep where they are because they could sell the property in University Circle much more than they could for downtown.
Oh,
And that's why because many of the dioceses did that. They have a second cathedral,
oh, really?
the more beautiful, more modern of the time cathedral. And so they began to, they decided to stay.
That second diocese, did we see that in Cincinnati then?
Cincinnati has
Okay.
that, yes.
Yeah.
New York,
New York, yes.
as many of the large dioceses, they built, because at that time the church had money
Right, right.
and they could build it. So
I was reading through some of the journals of historical documents, and I noticed that at one time a journalist had said that the cathedral was challenged by the neighborhood it was in.
yes,
And that there was some concern by the parishioners that we should really relocate because
yes,
this has turned out. And I believe that the decision that was made by the rector at that time is, no, we're staying.
right. That was
Yeah,
part of it.
that's not what we do. We don't just pick up and leave because it doesn't suit
The
us.
theological reason was that, and there
Yes.
was also a financial one too.
I'm sure. Yeah, well, that's true.
But yeah, that period, 1840 to 1930, that whole area, you just can't imagine the flood of people that came in,
Mhm,
and the very big and beautiful churches that were built,
mhm.
and you can, if you follow the churches in Cleveland, that's where the migration was going as it continued to move both eastward and westward and south as the Cleveland began to grow and become more powerful.
Well, 185 is certainly a lot to be the mother church, Father Sean.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about the kind of processes, procedures, things that you have to orchestrate in order to communicate or work familiarly with the different parishes.
Sure. Well, so I would say it happens at a couple different levels. So
Okay.
the cathedral has, I would say, three very unique communities that all lay claim to it, that call it home. You know, we have, like most people in the suburbs, we are a parish, and we have parishioners who come on Sunday and come to Mass and go to confession and, you know, participate in, you know, catechetical endeavors and many of those things that most of our parishes have, right? We have an RCIA, we have a PSR program, sacramental preparation, all those things that you would associate with parochial life. And we have that at the cathedral. But in addition, because of our unique place, geographically speaking, in the middle of downtown Cleveland, right, this bustling city, we also have kind of almost a second congregation, which are the folks who maybe belong to a suburban parish, but then they come in and they work in the city of Cleveland. And so before they go to work, or maybe on their lunch break, they come to one of our 2 daily masses, or they come down for confession. And it's kind of an almost entirely unique group of people. They're not the people we typically see on Sunday, but they are people we see regularly, sometimes almost every day, who come to Mass there at the cathedral. And then, kind of tying into your question of how do we kind of relate to all these 185 parishes, because we are the mother church, whenever we celebrate a significant moment as a diocese, when we are ordaining men for the priesthood, when we are celebrating the Chrism Mass with the sacred oils that are used at those 185 parishes where the sacraments are blessed, and we're coming together to pray for life at the pro-life Mass, or to, you know, to foster Catholic education during Catholic Schools Week, it is at the cathedral that we gather from all of those parishes at this one place to pray together to God for whatever the need is that we have as the people of the Diocese of Cleveland. So there is this connection to this wider church, as well as even some more local communities. So there's a lot of people who lay claim to the cathedral as their spiritual home, and they can all rightly call it their home.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think, you know, live stream.
And right, we live stream our liturgies. And so people
Which is-
tune in from actually all over the world. I've had people email me from Australia saying that they've watched Mass at the cathedral.
Oh, that's great.
That's right. And traveling around as a retired priest, I traveled to many different parishes. People will comment on, you know, I saw you on television, and that it's amazing the power that live stream has, and really centering in the cathedral. So it's
So now we're starting to see change, and it's the time period between 1930 and 1970,
right.
and the civil rights and the protests against Vietnam. But we've in this time period kind of finished up World War II,
Mm-hmm.
Korea, some of the other skirmishes that have taken place that challenge us in our morals and our beliefs
Sure.
of what's right, what's wrong, and how do we stand up for right and wrong, not just in our faith, but as a moral community.
Sure.
We're doing the same thing, but we're relying on our Catholic faith to help us, to guide us in those decisions, in the way that we're going to teach our children and raise them. What should they think? So when we look at change, sometimes we look at suffering. And when we look at suffering, does the cathedral suffer?
Yes, like any people who suffer, whenever there is difficulty, whenever there is struggle, whenever there is hardship, there's suffering in the human heart. And I think it's a place that people go to bring their sufferings to the Lord, to look for answers, to look for healing, to look for help. I think that's the beauty of the church. We are with people through the entire gamut of life's journey. We are there for the joyous moments when a child is born and baptized, when a couple gets married, or someone is confirmed, or someone receives an answer to their prayers and they come to praise the Lord. And we're with people when they suffer, when someone dies and we're burying their beloved family member, when someone gets a serious medical diagnosis, or someone is just looking for a job, or they've become homeless. We have many homeless people who are part of the congregation there at the cathedral. When people find themselves dealing with life's questions and difficulties and suffering, they come there too, to look for consolation, to look for answers from the Lord, to look for help and look for healing. And they not only encounter the Lord there, but we also have many social services that we have as we reach out to the people in the neighborhood who are suffering, who need help. We see people every day who are coming in for a variety of services that we provide for. Yeah.
And I imagine the schools come and visit us there too.
Oh,
Right.
sure.
Oh, we have tours all the time. Various
Oh, yes,
groups of
all the
people,
time.
all the time. Yeah, if you're watching those live streams during the week, sometimes you see some of the
They're still touring.
in the cathedral.
One of the things too that I think is important, the cathedral has been the place of protest. There have been there were priests that pointed out that we weren't doing enough to protest Vietnam. There have been others that protest one or another issue, and trying to make the point that the church is somehow not up to snuff, or that we have said something that they have disagreed with. So that also is part of what the cathedral is, because the people that really want to make a point realize the cathedral is where you go. That's where you're going to make the point.
That's the symbol of the seat of the church.
Yeah.
I guess that's the centering of what we are when we're in Avon or Illyria, or some of the other places that are more on the outskirts, and looking in and saying, can I relate to what the cathedral is? It just seems like when you walk through the doors, you just feel like you're at home. There's a certain awesomeness of love and unity. Whenever I go into the cathedral, I feel it. Tell us about some of the artwork and things that we have in there that physically help us to represent ourselves.
Sure. So the cathedral is sort of a neo-Gothic kind of architecture. And you see that. One of the things that when we have tours, and I'm one of the people that helps give tours, and we have a whole staff of docents that do, is they come into the cathedral and their eyes are immediately sort of lifted up into the grandeur of this beautiful space. And you can just tell that, they're sort of in awe of what they're seeing, because the cathedral is beautifully kind of decorated, from the ceiling and the walls and the statues and the beautiful wooden reredos at the back, and it's just sort of this beautiful massive scale, and it literally does what the architecture is meant to do, is sort of to lift your eyes sort of toward the heavens. And so one of the things I always ask folks as they come in is, how many of you have ever been to the cathedral before? And I'm always amazed how many people sort of have never been there before. And so I'm delighted to be able to kind of share with them this beautiful space. And if you're interested, give us a call. We'll be happy to set up a tour. They usually run an hour and a half, and we walk through there. There's just so much to see. I couldn't possibly go over it all now, but it is such a beautiful space with such a magnificent history in its art and its architecture. And it's changed over the years. That initial cathedral that was built back in 1848 was enlarged pretty significantly. The bones of the structure still remain, but for its 100th anniversary, 2 transepts were added, these kind of arms that stick out the side of the church, and kind of a back part. So the church now has kind of a cruciform shape if we were to look at it from the sky. And there have been kind of little renovations over the years. We were talking about change earlier. one of the changes that was made in the cathedral, kind of a humorous historical anecdote, is the cathedral was one of the very first buildings in downtown Cleveland to actually have air conditioning.
Air conditioning.
Yes, there underneath the cathedral, there's kind of like a big storage area, but there used to be a giant room that was basically like a big swimming pool. And there were ice makers that used to make ice, and they would dump all of this ice into the pool, and there are these fans that would blow over that ice water and blow up into the church. So it was primitive, but it was one of the very first buildings in the city of Cleveland to have air conditioning. So to alleviate a little suffering of sorts during those hot summer months.
Cleveland ingenuity never disappoints.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And also, I think the church itself is really beautiful, and you really need somebody to point out all the various things that are part of it. I was walking with a group, and the docent said, "Look it up there," and I said, I had never seen it, and I had said Mass there for 6 years, and I never looked up. So it's really amazing. And I think one of the nice things about it is the choir.
Oh,
the
it's a
music
beautiful
program.
choir. Yes.
Really amazing.
Yes. It lifts me every time.
Oh, yes.
So we talked a little bit about suffering. We talked about challenges. We talked about the culture. And just, I mean, when you think about how are you going to take, let's say you were city planning or doing something along that line, something secular, and you said, how are we going to get all these people like coalesce? And then somebody would sit there and say, for their faith.
That's it.
And then you would say, okay, but how do we get them to center their faith? And then I think that what you would have to say is through a center point, through the cathedral. And in that takes all of these anomalies and makes one of them. It's kind of like in Romans, where God said, you know, we're all one in one body.
Sure.
And this kind of brings it together in terms of it's not by accident.
Well, I think part of it too is the cathedral comes from the word cathedra. And the cathedra is the seat of power or judgment in some cases, from the Roman times. And every cathedral has a cathedral. Ours is in the back, and they have the seal of the bishop on the top of it. And that's the seat of power for the diocese, as well as the binding force of the diocese, I think, is in the person of the bishop while he's sitting on it, and then for the next one coming in.
Right, right. So celebration is another part of the equation.
Yes.
And all the positive enrichment that takes place. You get to see all of this. We only glimpse in our own world of, I remember when I went to so-and-so's wedding, or, you know, I remember the baptism of so-and-so. Tell us about the different things that we do enjoy at the cathedral.
So just in general, we have everything that a parish would have, right? We have all of the sacraments that are celebrated, baptisms, confirmation. We have sacraments that aren't celebrated in your typical parish, like ordinations, right? As men are ordained to the diaconate and to the priesthood. You know, we have, you know, the numerous celebrations, you know, throughout the year, celebrations of life, you know, typically in January, and we have celebrations of Catholic education and all of those things that we kind of have as a larger diocesan community. We have, you know, the annual red mass for the lawyers and judges. We have the annual white mass for, you know, doctors and nurses and medical professionals. So it's a celebration kind of this broad spectrum of life that encompasses the entire diocese. Specifically as a cathedral, as we celebrate 175 years now here in the city of Cleveland, we are sort of in the midst of, we've been doing a whole bunch of things throughout this year. We've been having monthly tours, and we've had sort of various parish gatherings and celebrations, and we've done a kind of a pilgrimage to some holy sites that are kind of a bus trip away. We have a big pilgrimage to some Marian shrines coming up in September. But to sort of cap off this year, before we have the big closing mass with the bishop, we're going to have a big sort of black tie optional gala.
Oh,
yes.
What fun. Wow.
Yes.
Well, tell us more about that. That sounds like
this year, October the 12th, which is a Saturday, we are having a black tie optional affair. So think of, you know, dinner and dancing, and, you know, there'll be some, you know, presentations and hors d'oeuvres and music and, you know, silent auction. And it's just going to be a wonderful event to bring people together to celebrate 175 years of the Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist, there in the beating heart of the city, this beautiful symbol and proclamation of who we are as Catholics and all the work that we do to spread the gospel, to take care of the poor, to bring people together to celebrate that, the 175 years that we have, but also to ensure the next 175 years.
Sure.
You know, the church will be here long after we're gone, and it was here long after we came along. And so we want to make sure that that legacy that we have inherited from all those who came before us gets passed to the next generation. And so part of it is coming together to celebrate that and to then help shore up that next 175 years. And so the gala is open to everyone. It's not just specifically those who may go to the cathedral on a regular basis. It is the Mother Church. And so in some way, we can all claim her as our home. And so we want to invite anybody that wants to come, bring your family, bring your friends, on October the 12th to come and to celebrate this 175 years. The demi-semi-sepcentennial is the fun and fancy word for 175.
I love that.
Yeah.
Sounds like a-
Demi-semi-sepcentennial.
You say it so well. I don't know
Yes,
that I
I
could do it as well.
practice.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I love the way that you let me get this correct. You're inviting every one of the 185 parishes and all their families to consider signing up and coming to this. How do they do that?
Absolutely. So the easiest way to do it would be to go to Cathedral's website, and you can click right on the main page and you can get your tickets to the gala right there. Couldn't possibly be easier. If you want, feel free to call the Cathedral or shoot us an email, and we'd be happy to get you connected with that information.
Are you taking donations for people that might not be able to come?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anyone that might be interested in just supporting the work that the Cathedral does in the heart of the city, you can make actually donations right on that very same page.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah, there's an option. You can either sponsor a table, you can buy an individual ticket, or if you simply want to make a donation to support that event, which goes to support the legacy of the Cathedral going forward, you can do that as well.
So if I heard you correctly, the monies are going to be used for what purpose?
Correct. So the monies are going to get rolled into a legacy endowment, which is for the upkeep of the cathedral and the ministry that it does there in the heart of the city. So it's basically, if you want to think about it this way, it is to ensure the continued presence and operation of the cathedral right there in the heart of the city, spreading the gospel and caring for those who are in need.
Mm-hmm.
I have to compliment you. And not being a layperson, I don't know who was involved in it, but what you have done to the stone on the cathedral is beautiful. The lighting is fabulous. The Gallagher Garden is just so nurturing.
And beautiful.
Incredibly beautiful. So everywhere that I'm seeing that monies are going towards the structure and what we're doing and the future, I have to commend you. It's being well spent. It's noticeable. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And to be honest, the entire city of Cleveland benefits from it and takes advantage of it. That beautiful garden that you just mentioned, where we have this beautiful statuary, beautiful sort of, garden arrangements and tables and chairs. People who are downtown, they stop, grab a sandwich from Subway, and they sit in the garden, right?
I see that.
Yeah, they may not even, be connected with the cathedral in any formal way, but there they
Yeah.
sit. And there's almost a kind of indirect evangelization there. As they're sitting there eating their sandwich from Subway, it's not just any garden, but right across from them is our Lord on the cross, or
Yes.
St. Patrick, or Our Lady of Knock, or Mother Teresa. They're with them, and hopefully it causes them, as they're sitting in the beauty of nature, as they're sitting around these holy symbols, to maybe begin to think about deeper questions as they eat that foot-long meatball sub.
Well, I want to thank you both, Father Sean, Father Manning. You're so special to us. We love you. And we want to thank you for all that you're doing in maintaining and growing and making the cathedral and St. John the Evangelist such a meaningful expression of who we are in our parishes, in our faith practice. I invite the audience, if you have a family member that has experience in the cathedral and a special story, please email that to them. They can get on the Facebook page.
Facebook page, and actually right on our cathedral website, we have the opportunity where you can share those memories.
We'd like to be able to do that. It's all a part of us being united as one when we share. And please look forward to other broadcasts and podcasts related to Unite Us in Faith here at the Cleveland Diocese, the Cleveland Cathedral and St. John the Evangelist. God bless you.